Good morning, Marvin. How are we doing today?
All right, all right. Good to see you again, Fred.
It's a wonderful day, and I'm so excited about you and I launching this podcast that focuses on service excellence because service excellence and service culture is probably the most critical factor that contributes to the welfare and the well being of a company. Would you agree with that?
I think it's one of the hottest topics based on what's going on worldwide right now, because all of that service culture is in the midst of heavy change. It always had change, but it seems like right now it's got pandemic change.
Look, personally, I've experienced it, and I'm seeing that my clients and my prospects are experiencing it as well. It's a form of PTSD coming out of COVID right now. Everyone was thrown into a different business cycle, different business model over the last 18 months, and they're just starting to emerge from that now and realize that there's a new different out there and they have to adapt to it. And I personally believe that the way to adapt is really to take a close look at your service model, your service design within your company, and see what are you doing right? What can you do better to ensure a consistent engagement with your clients and your customers?
It's going to be an ongoing challenge because what you're talking about there, it was a challenge before to keep together a quality team. And now people that may have been on your bus in your organization, but not totally enthusiastic, they're now using this situation as a way for them to rethink and go ahead and throw themselves into another purpose and another industry. So I anticipate continued turnover. And so what I hear when you talk about service culture is the need for the systems to be in place whenever the people are going to be in constant transition in and out.
Yes. And two, we have to look at it also from the customer client perspective. They're coming out of this with different and higher expectations of companies. They want to be assured that the company they did business with 18 months ago is going to continue to deliver on the product and the service that they always have without any interruption. The people who are accustomed to doing business with you want to make sure they're doing business with the same company now, that it's not a new company. If it is a new company, it's a new, better company at least, but
Uh,
not a company that's lost ground.
you make a great point because what I'm fixing to tell you didn't exist back 35 years ago whenever I started my insurance and financial planning firm. Well, one of the ads and signs that we have now is it's tech when you need it, talk when you don't. Well, man, there was no tech involved in 1988. And so, just in the last year, I don't know about you, but my own personal job description, whether I chose it for myself or world conditions chose it for me, I live mostly on Zoom and inside of text messaging apps. And although we call this an iPhone, quite frankly, it's for me much more of a mobile device than it is a phone like the good old days. And so I am seeing people embracing us mainly through tech, not so much through talk.
Well, and I agree with you, but I also think that talk is there's a void that has to be filled. Without a doubt, not just talk, but personal, person to person engagement. Uh, right now, we're looking at possibly this pandemic pendulum starting to swing back. And
I was going to mention that.
just when we were starting to get a little footing and being able to go out and meet. And I think people will still meet because those who are vaccinated feel more secure in a group environment with some protection. But I really do believe that there's a strong desire for people to connect with one another again and feel that service component, feel that warmth, the warmth of the engagement, the person to person engagement. And whether we go back to shaking hands or continue doing elbow bumps, it's a physical contact. And
Fred, let me ask you a question. Do you think that the buying public, let's say, for instance, you have a lot of expertise in the restaurant industry. Do you think that consumer is going to have to exercise a little bit more patience as it relates to they had that previous service excellence expectation, and now it's been a year and a half, going on 2 years, whatever, and the new normal is it's going to be in and out as far as having a proper staff to develop that service excellence. Are we going to see the buyer become more patient or no?
well, I think some yes and some no. It depends on what the buyer's expectation is when they cross the threshold into that establishment. If they have the mindset to know, okay, as far as service delivery, I would expect the same quality service. As far as being patient, I, I'm not quite sure what do I have to be patient about? Now, if the mandate is I have to wear a mask going into the place and my server is going to wear a mask, uh, that's something that's different. I don't know that is something that I have to be patient about. As far as in your illustration, your question regarding the restaurant business, if I go into a restaurant, I still expect my food to be served in a timely fashion and with accuracy. I want to get what I ordered. Uh, Now, the restaurant has an obligation to retool itself and retool its operation to ensure that I'm going to get that delivery on time and with the same level of quality as I have come to expect, maybe even better. So when you say, do I have to be patient? Do I have to be patient with expecting inferior food or inferior service because of the pandemic? I would be impatient with a company that has not made the adaptation to the new
Because
environment.
a quick little story that happened. Actually, it's me that has to find a way to be more patient. I go into a national brand restaurant that's famous for real good home cooked breakfasts. I get there around 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm by myself. I go up to the concierge table or whatever they call it. I'm first in line. There's no hostess there to greet me. I wait about 10 minutes. I do locate the hostess, but she's involved in a personal text message that obviously is much more important than sitting old Marvin down. And so
Marvin,
fine,
let me just
waited.
say that. Let me just say this, Marvin. That is a whole different podcast when we start talking about
Yeah.
the distractions.
Yeah,
Go-
and I'm
but g-
looking inside the restaurant. There's a lot of tables. There's a lot of tables. I'm a one-some. I'm a one-topper. Okay. She finally decides that I become important after she finished her message. She comes up. Well, about that time, two or three couples came in behind me, and she says, "Yes. What's your party?" Well, I'm pointing. I said, "I'm a party of one." Well, they said they were a party of four. She sits them before she sits me. Oh, the Cajun. I was
I
boiling, Fred, and
look.
so I have other choices. So what did I do? I got my keys and I got in my car and I went less than 1,000 feet to a competing national chain. Um, so you see, I did not handle. I did. I couldn't handle the patience. And I think the reason I got a problem with it is I saw those empty tables. What I didn't see was she might not have had the help to help me.
Right. Yeah. But even beyond that, had my question would be before pandemic time when they had the staff. would she have treated you the same way as just one person? You know, how many times do you go in as a single diner and you say, "I'd like a table for one," and they say, "Only one?" Like, they
But
diminish your presence. I mean, that's a pet peeve of mine. Okay,
go
when we
get a
start
friend and then we'll wait on you.
when we start talking about restaurants, you know, I think, you know, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about that in a while, but I blame management for not putting the importance of every individual that walks through the door to make them. And look, diners who dine alone usually kind of have a little bit of an inferiority complex when they come in, because they're told, they're asked just one, only one. It the visit is diminished by the head count. And I think that's a sad testimony to these restaurants that do that. On the contrary, they should make you feel like you're in with a party of 10, to elevate your presence and to elevate the way you feel about it. You know, just nurture that relationship. Uh, I mean, this is a segue, if you if you'll allow me to do this. But, you know, I go back to my early days of customer service awareness. And I had the distinct privilege of working for Ella Brennan as assistant manager at her restaurant on Royal Street, Brennan's in New Orleans. And I mean, you know Brennan's, you know Commander's Palace, which was one of her restaurants. There was not a more customer service oriented individual that I have ever come in contact with that has done and executed the better business, a better customer service model than Ella Brennan. You know the restaurants,
I
okay?
can't believe the statistic. What's that statistic where there's all of these restaurants across the entire planet Earth, and there's only one family that happens to own two of the top 10 in the world? Is that true?
Yep. Yeah. Brennan's
I mean,
in
that speaks
Commander's
volumes
Palace.
for her system.
Oh, and let me tell you, I don't have enough time to go into it, but if you really want to learn about why Brennan's and Commander's Palace have experienced the success that they have, take a look at the movie the Ella Brennan
I
movie.com.
got to write that down.
Look look that up, and it's worth the rent. It's a 90-minute, fabulously produced documentary, and it really gets into it really gets into the nuts and bolts of what drove Ella Brennan to the excellence that she achieved in her lifetime as a restaurateur, as one of the most formidable restaurateurs in the country, if not in the world at the time. And it was a distinct privilege for me to work for her, and learn from her and have her mentor me in not just the restaurant business, but in the service component of that business. I can tell you, one time I was rude to I was rude to one of the patrons that came in.
Impossible, not you, Fred.
Oh, not me. I mean, you have to understand, I was 23 years old. It was in
Yeah,
the
you were
middle.
younger then. You weren't even taking Metamucil at that time.
Not yet, not then. And I remember it was the middle of August. I was hungover. I had to be in there early, and this woman came in to be seated with a group that had already been seated about 30 minutes. And I told her that if she would have a seat, I'd get her a table as soon as possible, because there was just a group that was having the same menu. And she told me, "I'll have you know, I am Mrs. dot 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 dot, and I expect to be seated with this group." So, of course, I didn't want to hear somebody tell me, "I'll have you know." I wasn't in the mood for that. And being a little hungover, I snapped back at her and I said, "Well, Mrs. dot 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 dot, like I said, if you have a seat, I'll find a table for you." Well, as it turned out, Ms. dot 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 was a dear friend of Ella Brennan.
Ow.
And that afternoon, I got more than an earful from Ella Brennan about how I treated that person and how I needed to treat every person that crossed the threshold of this restaurant, to quote her verbatim. And she directed me to go to my office and write a personal handwritten letter of
Really?
apology to Mrs.
Oh,
dot 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 dot. And that was a lesson that really stuck with me. I was embarrassed that I had to be called on the carpet for it, but I wrote the letter and I learned a valuable lesson. And it's something that I've never had to revisit again in my life because it was so ingrained, and because of the respect I had for Ella Brennan to honor her demand to do it. There was no argument, there was no pushback. I saw the value in what she was teaching me in that moment.
so listeners out there, I want you to have caught this value bomb just now. Number one, look up and find that Ella Brennan movie, but don't watch it without a pen and paper. You're struggling in your service culture. Even if you're a great company, you're struggling because your culture is being changed by factors beyond things that you control. That's number one. Number two, a lesson from Ella there is everybody counts. Everybody counts. We've always heard about how don't judge a book by its cover. You just never know. And so what we have to do is develop the habit. Excellence is a habit. It's not something you turn on and off. It's something that becomes you. It's that central focus. And when we talk further, whether it's Ella Brennan or some of her team members being interviewed, you would hear those same values that has actually become part of their tissue. It's part of their DNA. Otherwise, if she didn't have that system in place and that DNA wasn't in place, we wouldn't be talking about her being a top 10 world-class restaurant.
And Marvin, they call it service culture for a reason, because it is a culture that the company develops over time. And it's recognized by the public. It's recognized by the people who patronize those those respective businesses. When you talk about culture, you're talking about that DNA component, the reason they exist. They've developed this culture around their brand and around the mission of here's why we exist and here's what makes us different from every other restaurant, every other law firm, every other whatever business there is out there. The identity of the organization in that business is encapsulated in their service culture.
It has been repeated so many times in boardrooms, and that has been, well, what makes us different? You heard it so much that a lot of people don't continue to give it the amount of attention and alertness. But it's a question that all of our organizations have to constantly continue to ask: what makes us different? One of my favorite people in the world, who happens to be Fred Reggie, his famous quote was, "Everybody continues to do business. They just might not continue to do business with you." Ow, man, when I heard that, oh boy, that is something that I hear. And I said, oh, they're going to do business. They just might not do business with me. And that resonated. And I want to thank you for that. And we're going to conclude this particular broadcast right here. But man, Fred and I have so much other material prepared for you. You're going to not only want to listen to this, you're going to want to share this with your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers and relatives, because the nuggets that you're going to hear is going to help your company perform better in the new normal. This is Fred and Marvin saying, talking to you another time. Thank y'all for tuning in.
You don't want to miss the next one, because we are going to continue this service culture discussion, because we couldn't get it all into this one. But we're going to give you some examples of what terrific service looks like and what horrible service looks like.
I can't wait. I can't wait, Fred.
Hey, thanks for joining. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you on the other side. We're back. We're back. Fred and Marvin, and we are going to talk a continuation of our talk from the last podcast to talk about service culture. And Marvin, I want to just kind of start this off as I reflect upon why am I so motivated to address service culture? It's something that I've always had. I talked to you about the Ella Brennan experience in my life, my first job out of college as assistant manager of Brennan's under her tutorship. And, but it really goes beyond that. And I didn't know what was at the core of my interest in service culture and customer service until a few years ago. I ran across some letters that my dad had written to my mother, and they were kind of love letters. He was 18 or 19 years
Nice.
old. It was back in 1933. And at the time, he owned a service station simply called Reggie's Service Station. And he hand wrote these beautiful letters to my mother when she was away in the summer visiting relatives in Shreveport. And I was always so engrossed in what he had written to her that I didn't notice that they were written on his letterhead, Reggie's Service Station. And at the bottom, underneath the letterhead, there was a tagline. And the tagline was, "We serve to serve again." And I had never heard that before. And that resonated with me. You know, we serve to serve again. It told me that my dad was in business not as a one-off experience. He was there to engage his customers so they would come back time and time again. And as I think back growing up, my father really lived that. He walked the talk. Everything that he did in business, he served to serve again. And I think that's what was ingrained and instilled in me growing up. And that's what pulled me towards service culture and the development of
Powerful.
service culture in a business.
That is so
Uh,
powerful. I don't know why, after all of my reading, I had never heard something as simple yet profound as we serve to serve again. So hopefully our listeners will jot that down in their notebook and cover it at their next meeting for sure.
yeah, it just had a profound effect. In fact, that has become my company motto. You know, serve to serve again, because I want to remain engaged with customers. I want to be a resource that they can rely on and depend on when it comes to service culture and service culture development. Uh, I, it speaks to that there are two types of selling. There's transactional selling and there's relationship selling. And the transactional part, sign on the line, here's your product, give me the money, and it's done. And while there's some transaction component to every sale, you know that. You're in the insurance business, right? Uh, but it's the relationships that keep people coming back for more. It's what builds the repetition in your business, the reliability. It's what causes people to refer you to their friends and to other business associates.
That is
So,
so true. That
so
is
I,
so
I,
true.
I wanted to put that out there because I really think that that's the landscape that was created for me at a very early age. What about you, Marvin? What?
I, I think you just described the young Marvin. That young Marvin had so much to prove, and that young Marvin was very transactional and meet the specific goals and those sorts of things. And then I don't know how I stumbled on this book. I think I might have heard a radio broadcast. That was back in the day where you had to press the button in your car, and I heard a man named Charles Swindoll, and the name of his book is called "Improving Your Serve." And at first, I thought, well, is this about tennis? And it had nothing to do with tennis. It was about servanthood, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, but your foundational beliefs as it relates to serving others is basically going to be the indicator on whether or not you can be successful or not. And so if you guys want to catch that book, I bet you it was probably 15, 20 years ago when I read it. Charles Swindoll, Improving Your Serve.
That's excellent. And let me just inject something here. You know, you and I have been talking for some time now about the relationships that we build with customers and the service component. Let's not forget that within the organization, we serve one another as well. There's it's overdone when we talk about internal and external customers, but there really is a relationship that needs to be built among coworkers that are working towards the vision of the company. And everyone within an organization has something that we buy from them. Maybe not buy, with money, but there's something that is provided that we need, and there's something that we provide that they need. And it's to be able to identify that and to serve that need the same way we serve the needs of our customers.
You just brought up something that I didn't think I was going to cover, but when we talk about relationships right now, we're talking about inside the relationships of a company. There is give and take. No different than a woman and a man who gets married. It's never a 100-100. Sometimes one person is carrying the load for the other one who's going through a bad spot. Well, let's go back to what you were talking about earlier in a previous broadcast. So if you listeners didn't hear the last broadcast when Fred went into eloquently talking about Ella Brennan and owning Brennan's restaurant and working owner of Commander's Palace. Imagine in their situation, whatever, 30, 35 workers for one shift is on. Well, you don't have to be that smart to realize that out of 35 people coming in, 5 of them had a bad morning or had a bad afternoon. And so the give and take with those other co-workers, because they still have to do a performance that day, whether it's my team performing in the insurance and financials arena, my team performing when we go do an event in front of 500 or 1,000 people. Not everybody wakes up on their game, but man, if there is a tight chemistry on the team, if we just have, I've often read where every team should have, each team member should have one best friend that's on the team. And that one best friend could be the person that just keeps them connected until they find their way. Because that first 15 minutes, half hour, maybe somebody had a migraine headache. Maybe they had a kid who spilled milk all over right before school. Any number of things, because life is going to continue to happen. And so I see it as a give and take. As early as yesterday, I am a person that loves to cut up with my team. And I had an individual who always comes in spot on and happy. Well, man, she was dragging because she had caught her a good old NyQuil head cold, and it was not happening. Yeah. Well, at first I started to cut up with her, only to realize, hey, today's not the day. Today's not the day, man. You need to back that off, Marvin, okay? Because today's not the day. And to recognize that, that's all got to do with, hey, do we have our team together before this team performs for the public for the rest of the day?
Yeah. Yeah. You got it. It has to function as a unit. And the only way to function as a unit is if everybody understands that they have to be on the same page. They have to be focused on the same service culture vision towards one another and towards the customers.
Yeah. A team that where just one or two people are not all in, man, that is a cancer that's going to keep on living. And so as an owner, my first customer is always my team members first. Do I have that team set up for that day? Are we on the right same page? Another thing we'll talk at a later time when we cover my 5 impossible laws, Fred, has to do with the fact that one of the impossible laws is it is impossible to over communicate. Well, what do you mean, Marvin? I had this conversation with my dad, who was a chemical superintendent, and I said, "Dad, man, I've already discussed this with these people. Man, why do I have to keep going over it and over and over again? Can't they just get it the first time?" He said, "Son, that's not what management and leadership is. Management and leadership is that you're going to have to be a constant repeater and a constant encourager. And so if you can't sign on for that, then you're not going to be a great leader." And that was a good smackadoodle in my head to say, hey, man, even though you have covered the system over and over, okay, you got to recover it fresh, like as if they've never heard it.
But it's so critical that you have an onboarding process for incoming new hires, so everyone understands what they're coming into and what the expectations are.
Great
And
point.
that they're properly instructed, because there are just too many times where, okay, you've built your team, they're great, one leaves, you have to hire a replacement, and rather than just saying, okay, this is your job, and giving them the job description, you've got to include, this is our culture. This is how we serve one another. This is how we serve our customers, and understand that.
Fred, you really, you hit on a great thing there. You're making me ping in all kind of ways, thinking of different things. One of the things I feel like is a cornerstone of my success, because quite frankly, I've had no success without great team members. Now, that doesn't mean that they were great when they were hired, but what it does mean is over a four-decade career, I continue to work on my systems. And for you listeners out there, I would strongly encourage you to embrace, when you're looking at problems, when you're looking at processes, when you're looking at systems, always be asking, why are we doing that? Because if we are continuing to do something and we can't be clear on why we're doing it, then we shouldn't be doing it. And so I continue to massage my processes and systems, and we every single week are asking, hey, is this something we should keep doing? Because staying on a path to something where you don't have clarity on why you're doing it, it's only going to produce bad results.
I totally agree. You know, when we talk about the experience, the customer service experience, they're not all good. You know, and I want to share probably my worst customer experience. May I do that? Because as it turns out, it happens to be restaurant related. And you know, when we talk about customer service, so many of us think, and our thoughts immediately go to restaurant service, right? I mean, I think that's at the top. But it's not all restaurant service. So but this particular instance was an experience that I had at a restaurant, and I just have to share it, because when I conduct workshops on customer service and I bring this out, this is the one that always gets the oohs and the ahs and the raised eyebrows. Several years ago, there was a restaurant not far from my office that I would frequent no less than twice a week. Okay, it was a plate lunch place. It was we call it a meat and three, right? You get a meat, 3 vegetables, and that was it. And everything was prepared, already pre-prepared, and you put your order in and they'd put it on a plate and bring it out. It was kind of a no-brainer. And I would always go there with at least two to 4 people. We would go and have lunch. And this one time I was going with a cousin of mine, said, hey, let's go to this restaurant and and I can say the name of it because it's not even open anymore, but it had been open a long time. It's called Antlers. And I remember we went in for lunch. It was 11:30, figured we'd beat the crowd. We got in, we sat down. The waitress came and took our order. It was pork chop day, so we wanted the smothered pork chop, and we ordered the pork
Mhm.
chop. So we were talking and going over things, and I realized that 35 minutes had passed, and we didn't get
Really?
our order.
Wow.
Yet there were other tables that came in and had received their order. And so I called the waitress over and I said, I said, it's been about 35 minutes and we haven't received our order. She said, well, I'm very busy today. She was kind of hard. We're very busy. That's well, I said, I realize
Nice.
that, but there was a table of 6 that came in and they've been served, and this table of 4 and they've been served. She says, well, they call their order in ahead of time. So I kind of looked at my cousin and I said, hey, I said, I guess next time we need to call our order in. You know, I was being facetious. And finally, at about 2 minutes later, she comes out with our food and pretty much drops it on our table.
Yeah.
So we ate. I asked for the check. She brought the check back and she kind of haughtily put it down in front of me. And she says, I told my manager about the way you yelled at me. I said, I didn't yell at me. Well, she said, you can come early next time or don't come at all.
Oh, so she's directing you there. Oh,
Yeah, she's telling me, she says, my manager said you can come early next time or don't come at all.
wow.
And I said, your manager said that? She said, yes, she did. So I see this woman walking around who seems to be in a position of authority. And I signaled her over and I said, excuse me, are you the manager? She says, yes, I'm the manager owner. Okay. And I said, I just need some clarification. My waitress said, I'm sorry, my server said that you told her that I could come early or don't come at all. She says, yes, I told her that. You upset her. I said, I didn't upset her. I just wanted to know where my food was after 35 minutes. So she says, well, we're not a fast food restaurant. You were not a McDonald's or Burger King.
Man, that was just
So,
continuing to
so
go
I said,
south.
well, you've pretty much made my decision. I will never come again. And nor will I bring the 2 to 4 people twice a week that I've been bringing. And I left and I never did go back. Now, this was a while back where social media was not prevalent, or else what would have happened. but it just goes to show how little value someone can put in a customer.
Fred, I gotta believe that that probably wasn't an isolated case, whereby it's probably also the reason why they're not in business. Because what that server was getting from top management
Yeah.
was the wrong message from the beginning.
Well, from the owner.
Yeah.
And it was the service. That's the service culture model they had. You
Yeah.
know,
Uh, I,
it's
I often tell my team and the teams that I coach, I often tell them, number one, the customer is not always right. But number two, you are not the judge on whether they're right or not. So if you need to vent, you can vent, but you are not allowed to vent to the customer. You want to come in my office, you want to go in the back parking lot and scream and get it out after, that's fine. But you're not. So when that server said that to you, okay, and that little nonverbal, I can just see her just throwing that check down.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, and or you cannot come. You know what? If she felt that way, that owner or the server, okay, you're not the person that should have ever heard that. Don't tell that to a customer.
Right.
And yet we're talking about this, and there's some people out there that says, well, Marvin, Fred, that's common sense. Well, let me tell you, it is happening right now today in your city.
Yep.
Right now in your city, because they've gotten so far away from what customer service is all about.
They don't realize the importance of connection. They don't, serving to serve again. If you're serving to serve again,
Yeah.
you don't tell people to come early or don't come at all.
Yeah.
You're,
Uh,
you're cutting out the serve again part.
so a quick little story onto the same thing. About 100 feet from my office is a hole in the wall restaurant called Central Po' Boys, and I got a back porch on the back of my office, and so I don't really have to call them to find out what's on the menu. All I have to do is inhale and smell. I can smell whether they got fried shrimp going on. I can smell if they got a good cheeseburger going on. On Wednesdays, they got smothered pork chops with onions on the top of it. Okay. On Tuesdays, they have fried chicken. Mondays is red beans and rice with hot sausage. Thursdays is Italian day. I usually end up with spaghetti. And on Fridays,
I think you eat there frequently, huh?
I eat that pretty frequently. And so I said to myself, that's what I call me when I have conversations with myself. I'm going to go today and all I'm going to have is a salad. So I walk in there, they see me. They already have, a previous history with me. I tell them I want a salad. It was on a Friday. I sit down over there at their bar. The cook, okay, I've worked with her some of her problems with her kids and grandkids. Okay, so I knew her. Well, the cook brings out angel hair pasta with crawfish etouffee sauce and 2 pieces of fried catfish and 4 shrimp. I said, I ordered salad. She said, I don't care what you ordered. I decided this is what you're going to eat today. You see, so that's the whole, so
Sure.
pretty much I just walk in and it don't matter what I want to eat. Whatever they decide that they think I need to eat that day, that's the relationship.
Yeah.
And, there's that word again,
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
And do I get more food than other people? I do. And so it's not my responsibility for the additional pounds. They make me eat that. And so that's my story and I'm sticking with it.
Well, and that's a great story. And one of the things that I put emphasis on with my clients when we're talking about service culture, when a customer or a client is engaged with you, that should be the best thing that's happened to that person all day. That should be the best thing that's happened to that person. There should be nothing that rises to the same level of experience, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's your law office, whether it's your retail store, whether it's your automobile dealership, whatever. Okay. That encounter, you should work for that encounter to be the best thing that's happened to that person all day.
Listeners, did you hear that just now, listeners? Make them glad they had a chance to talk to you today. Make them glad they had a chance. So wherever they were in their world, by the time you finish your transaction, no matter if it's a 5-minute transaction or a half hour, they walk away mentally more elevated than whenever they first said hello to you. I think that's a good example of that service culture, of that expectation, that they walk in and they know that they're going to be greeted by some people that are glad to see them.
Yeah. And Marvin, it doesn't apply just to business. In our everyday life, when we encounter someone, whether it's if we're checking out groceries, if we just see a friend and we say hi, whatever that encounter is should measure up to that experience. When I meet someone, when I see someone in the lobby of my building or whatever, I want that encounter to be the best thing that happened. Now, it may not be, but my intention is to make that the best encounter possible.
So what I just heard, or what you just made me think about, is the statement, you are the brand. You are the brand. And so if you run into somebody in an elevator, we are the sum total of the experiences and interactions that we have people. You are the brand. It's not a logo on a stationery. It's not big golden archers. It's not a big chicken on the sign. It's deeper than all that. And it's all inside of us. We
Yep.
still want a human experience. And so you are the brand. And so in your company, do you honestly feel like you represent the brand? If you're in our profession, Fred, both you and I are professional speakers. We know professional speakers that sadly are not consistently authentic, meaning they have a brand on stage, but then they treat the housekeeper disrespectful. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for you to be the brand at work. And by the way, when you get home, what kind of brand do you have with the wife and the kids?
That's
You were out
exactly.
there working 10 hours today. And so you come on home. Well, it's not a time just to collapse and not give them the right attention. I often say to myself, once I get in the car going home, I go through that work transition to start thinking about home and making sure most of the times I try to not talk much when I first come in so that I can find where their rhythm is.
Yeah.
Instead of being all up in their face, I try to find where their rhythm is. How about you in your workplace? Are you trying to find where that customer's rhythm is before you start talking about your program?
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, we really become ambassadors of our work when we go out in public. Uh, Case in point, as you know, for over 20 years, I was very much associated with St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and and I headed up a program where I was pretty much the face in our community for St. Jude Hospital. And I remember one time I was driving down the road with my wife, and someone cut me off. Okay. And I didn't flip them off, but I shook my fist at them and just really, I animated anger and frustration and in the situation. And my wife told me, she said, Fred, people associate you with St. Jude. You wouldn't want them to see you behaving like this. And that's something that stuck with me. And
That's excellent point. I've
you,
often talked about integrity.
yeah,
Okay, integrity. Now, this is a Cajun definition of integrity. Integrity is what you do when nobody else is looking.
yeah,
All right. So it could be something as simple. Well, you threw that candy bar wrapper on the ground. Okay, nothing pisses me off more than that.
yeah, I'm
My
with you.
my wife, God bless her, she finds all kind of little surprises in my back pocket. Because when I'm walking somewhere, if I see a cup or something, I'll fold it up and I put it in my back pocket, and I forget, to go put it in the trash can. So when it gets to the wash and dryer, she finds all these little prizes, and basically it's a whole lot of wrappers. And what that is it's low integrity. That's what it is. People who constantly show up late. It's not a problem with late. It's a problem with integrity. It's a
Mhm.
problem with lack of consideration for the other party. And so I often think about that. What if my mom and dad was looking at me across the back of my shoulder? Would I do this? It's a hell of a thing. Now, if you don't have good examples of parents that were highly structured and highly disciplined, that might not apply to you.
Yeah.
But often in my life, would you do it if mom and dad was standing right there? Boy, that was
Yeah.
some good lessons,
Oh,
Fred.
yeah, absolutely. Um, or if your kids were in the room,
Yes,
the
yes.
example that you want to set for them. Uh, no, we could go through example after example. One thing, I told you about the worst experience I've ever had. I've got to tell you about the best, the best customer experience I had. For years, I had been buying been buying Nissan automobiles from a guy in New Orleans, a guy by the name of Melvin Guerra, who worked for Ray Brandt Nissan. And I had bought a couple of cars from him. Nice guy, always gave me a fair shake. He knew I don't like playing the automobile buying game. So he knew it. He said, Fred, I've got this vehicle. It's going to cost you X number of dollars. I go in, sign the papers, and it was done. And he
Love
always
it.
took care of me. In 1992, Hurricane Lily hit our area and it hit our power grid. And we were without power for several days. And I needed a generator. So I finally, Lowe's finally got a shipment of generators in, went in my Pathfinder, loaded it up. I'm driving back to my house. My cell phone rings. It's Melvin in New Orleans. He says, Hey, Fred, this is Melvin. I saw that you guys got hit. We're 135 miles away, as you know, in
Wow.
Lafayette. He says, I saw where you guys got hit pretty hard with Hurricane Lily. He says, I just want you to know I have a generator. If you need it, I'll be happy to bring it to you. Now, listen, this is the automobile salesman that I bought. At that time, I had bought 3 vehicles from him.
Man,
I'll be happy. I was thinking about you and I have a generator. If you need it, I'll be happy to drive it over and bring it to you. Now, think about that. Think about that. Now, how many other Nissans have I purchased from Melvin
no
since
doubt.
1992?
But he
Try.
got it. He understood that service and relationship, and he probably just cared.
Yeah, oh, yeah, he really did.
Yeah,
How many people have I referred to him
no
over
doubt.
over the last 20 years? I can tell
Mm,
you a lot. And he's treated every one of them the same way he treats me. And it was genuine. I joke with him. I said, "Yeah." I said, "How many people in Lafayette did you call offering a generator to that
yeah,
day?"
yeah.
He says, "No, you were the only one." So, I mean, that just meant so much. And I've shared that story with him. And when I do workshops, conduct workshops on customer service and service culture, I always feature those 2 best and worst stories that I shared with you, because and he appreciates the fact that I do that. But I mean it, and I'll I'll continue buying automobiles from him. He's a great guy.
That right there is a great story. What else do you have for us today, Fred? Anything that you want to share? Anything additional that we left out?
You know, yeah, I want to talk just a minute about one of my favorite hotel chains, and that's the Four Seasons. And look, Four Seasons is a pretty Tony property, right? It ain't cheap to stay at a Four Seasons, and I wish I had the luxury to stay at Four Seasons every time I travel. But every time I have stayed at a Four Seasons, the service has been exemplary. I've always been made to feel as though I was the only guest in the hotel. No one has any fingers. No one points anywhere. If you if you ask where the elevator is, somebody's going to walk you to it. It almost take you by the hand. And a couple of years ago, I read Isidore Sharp's book. Isidore Sharp is the founder of Four Seasons Hotels, and he wrote a book called Four Seasons: A Business Philosophy, the story of a business philosophy. And I read it, and it just captivated me because it was it aligned with what I thought service culture should be. And his emphasis was the people on the front line, the people who are paid the least, are your biggest ambassadors for your brand. And I after I read the book, I did a little Google search and I found Isidore Sharp. He's still alive. I found
Wow.
his email address. So I wrote him a very nice email, complimentary email, that I just read his book and it aligned with my business philosophy. I even touched on the fact that I had been mentored by Ella Brennan, and service culture was at my core. And I started out my email. I said, "Dear Mr. Sharp, it's unlikely that you will directly receive this email, but I hope that whoever conveys the message, I hope someone will convey the message to you, albeit brief." And Within 3 minutes of sending that, I received a reply from his executive assistant, a woman by the name of Nan Wilkins. And she said, rest assured, Mr. Reggie, that Mr. Sharp will read your email. Within 3 minutes. Nan Wilkins was also written up in the book. He hired her in 1981.
I'll be darned.
And she's the one that responded to me. And 3 days later, I received a reply email from Isidore Sharp. Now, that may not sound like a big deal, but how many times do you have an impression of a business only to be disappointed when you try to engage that business? You maybe you had one good experience and then you go to another department and it's like doing business with a different company. And it showed that Four Seasons was true to its brand, true to its founder's brand. Fast forward to 2 days ago, I wanted to have a meeting, set up a meeting with the general manager of the new Four Seasons Hotel in New Orleans, because we're going to be conducting a service culture summit, hopefully in late spring. And my collaborators and I decided that we want to use Four Seasons as the venue, because Four Seasons exemplifies what we are trying to talk about, what we're trying to teach, the outcome we're trying to produce with this Service Culture Summit. So what's the best way to get in touch with the general manager? Well, let me contact Nan Wilkins, who I contacted 2 years ago, who forwarded my email to Isidore Sharp. Well, I said, Nan, attached is the email, our previous communication, just as a reminder, and here's what I'd like to do. And I detailed that I'd like an introduction to the general manager of the New Orleans property. The next day, I get an introduction to the manager. The manager now contacted me. She sent me an email, and she and I have a conference call. We're going to have a phone call tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So it's that just excites the hell out of me. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. I mean, it's
I'm kind of geeky when it comes to that kind of thing, but
well, because there's no accident. And like, I'm listening to you, and the first thing I said is, man, Fred, you and I need to interview Nan, because Nan is unto herself an amazing story. She could certainly tell us what happened in 81, but here she is, man, it's 2021. So she's been at it like 40 years, and she's still rocking it.
And let me put this, if I could pull the book up, I would read the part where he talked about hiring Nan. He needed someone to hire as an assistant who really would be happy being an assistant for the rest of her career, an assistant to him. So he wasn't looking to hire someone who had the ambition to move on. He realized he needed someone to be shoulder to shoulder with him throughout the development of the Four Seasons brand. And that was in 1981. And Nan still works for him today as his executive assistant.
I tell you who I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't want to be the person to ever have to replace Nan Wilkins.
Oh,
man.
Yeah.
I was once told by a coach who was trying to get me motivated. I was the starting linebacker and captain of the football team. And I said, I don't know, coach, last year's linebacker that graduated and got a scholarship, that's big shoes to fill. And you know what the coach told me? Marvin, you have big feet.
Oh, I like that.
You have big feet. Man, he didn't buy in at all to me having any self-limiting beliefs. Obviously, I was in imposter syndrome and comparing to this all-state linebacker. Yeah. And he tells me, yeah, he didn't deny the guy had you do have big shoes to fill, and you have big feet. And so oftentimes we're out there thinking we don't have big feet. You might be listening to this right now thinking, well, that's for somebody else. I don't have big feet. And what we're talking about right now, folks, is not big feet. It's about stepping up and realizing that you have those talents. You can do that. You can be a Nan Wilkins inside your company.
And Marvin, that is a perfect segue to what we're going to do in the future. We're going to dedicate a podcast to those limitations, that self-limiting thinking, that self-limiting behavior, that imposter syndrome that everyone, I don't care who you are, everyone experiences it once in a while in their life.
No doubt about it. So, listeners out there, if you'd like the little taste and a little spice of what we shared with you today, you keep listening because we've got many, many more great lessons to go through. I'm Marvin. This is Fred, and we love you. Peace, love, and gumbo. We'll see you on the next podcast. And don't forget to like us and follow us, and make sure you share us with your coworkers, with your friends, with your neighbors, and of course, your relatives.
And thank you for listening. And remember, make it your point to serve again. Until next time, take care.